My wife, 33, was an expert shopper. It helps that her grandmother and mother were very materialistic people while keeping a budget. She would hunt for the perfect sale, which is why I, 37, didn't usually jump up to go with her because she could be out for 6 hours or more. She would go out once a week, every Saturday, leaving the house by 6 a.m. She'd go to Saturday's market, then go to the mall, eat lunch, and probably shop more. We were married for 8 years, and the whole time she was in the habit of doing this. She took our 5-year-old daughter with her sometimes. My wife was a consistent light in my life, and I did not know she didn't deserve my trust. She started taking our daughter less and less often, leaving the house without waking her up or giving her the choice. I asked her why, and she said she could get back sooner without bringing her along, because a lot of the time, she would start to complain and get tired long before my wife was ready to come back home. I suppose that was a reasonable explanation, but my daughter and I were both bummed because she enjoyed those trips with her mom. Our daughter actually started asking her each time if she could go with her, and she'd say no each time. She'd do something else with her the next day, or bring home something nice for her, but it wasn't the same. I let it go for a while, but eventually I felt like I had to say something. I confronted her and told her she needed to take her with her that Saturday. She was not happy. I couldn't believe how inconvenient it was for her. She started to accept it and actually did follow through, but that Sunday, she went out alone. Usually, we all had family time and practiced meditation. Our girl always turned it into a game of peeking without getting caught. When the wife got back, she was really happy, like everything was fine. Then my daughter asked a question that led to the discovery of what was really going on. She asked her mom if she met the man with the puppet today. My wife forced a laugh and said no, he's only at the market on Saturdays. I asked who this was, and before my wife responded, our daughter said he was the man Mommy kissed yesterday. I looked at her with wide eyes. She knew we had to talk. I excused myself to another room and waited for my wife to set up our daughter with toys before joining me. I quizzed her until she was blue in the face, but she couldn't convince me her lies were true. She tried telling me our daughter was talking about something else, but I knew her speaking capabilities were pretty accurate. She even looked at my wife like she was going to be in trouble with Daddy. She knew it was wrong, and she wanted me to know, so my wife eventually came clean. She said he was a nice guy that she got close to over the years she'd been going to the market. He liked her more than friends, and she didn't want to break his heart, so she started giving him kisses. I didn't think there was any way she could believe this was okay. I told her she betrayed my trust by doing this, even by being friends with this guy without telling me. I'd like to know who she's involved with, even if only for safety's sake. Now I was suddenly aware of a guy she'd gotten to know for years, introduced to her daughter, and kissed. I looked her straight in the eye and asked her if she ever slept with this man or anyone else. She blushed hard, looked away, and told me no. How much more obvious it could have been that she was lying to me? I stared at her, but she only tried asking if we could leave the room now, and I said no. I told her to tell me the truth because her whole body looked like she was lying. Her mouth got really dry, and she started to dry heave. She excused herself to our bathroom and threw up. I told her she needed to get it off her shoulders so she could feel better, but she pretended not to have anything to say. I told her I didn't want her to go to Saturday's market anymore, and she lost it. She said this was one of her greatest joys in life, and I told her that she spoiled it for herself because she started kissing an older guy. I wondered if she said older to try to get me to let it go like I'd picture an old lonely man. I wasn't a fool, so for a whole month, she didn't go anywhere over the weekend. Finally, she made an excuse to go out, but she took our daughter with her to help convince me she wasn't up to no good. They'd come home with groceries or other stuff that proved they weren't at Saturday's market. I hated that this had become an issue between us now. Every time she left, I wondered if she was seeing Mr. Kisser. On the first date, she didn't offer to take our daughter. I followed her. She didn't go to Saturday's market, but she did go to someone's house. Before I got confirmation, I knew this was AP's house. I could feel it in my bones. It was like my wife's energy and emotion were contagious to me. I knocked on his front door after my wife went inside. AP answered it, and I asked him why I saw my wife just come inside. My heart was pounding out of my chest as I pictured this guy meeting my daughter. He looked young and confused, but before he could ask me anything, I asked if he was the puppet guy at Saturday's market. He covered his mouth for a second and asked me if I was her husband. I said yes and yelled my wife's name. She came out and he told her to leave. Then he told me she introduced herself as a widower. I felt like my heart stopped beating permanently and I was only surviving off air and my still blood. My wife came rushing out like she had a right to be mad, brushing past me. I followed her. She frantically tried to get in her car, but I grabbed her keys from her and ran to my car, locking the doors. She watched helplessly as I took her house key off before giving them back. She told her parents I kicked her out for no reason, so they let her stay with them and arranged to have a truck come get her stuff. They came over to visit with our daughter and asked me what really happened. I told them the truth, and they must have made my wife's life at their house a living hell because every day she told me she hated me for telling them what happened. She moved out in just 5 weeks, opting to take turns sleeping on different friends' couches rather than stay under their roof. The divorce went in my favor, and my wife is at least partially involved with our daughter. OP, it sounds like you came out on top of this experience, taking what you could learn from it and tossing the rest. Don't look back, and like you said, find the happiness and hope in every day you have to be alive and make choices. Choose to eat healthy, spend time with yourself, loved ones, work out to keep your body fit, and do what you love. Work on those habits you haven't thought of as sabotaging your life's progress. Expect nothing and accept everything you get in life with a grateful heart. Her kissing him like it was okay shows she did not have the maturity or level of thinking required to have a long-lasting, sacred relationship. It's much worse that she introduced your daughter to this outsider and herself as a widower. I wish you the best of luck moving forward. Now let's get into our second story for today. I, 34 male, was dating my fiancé, 32, for 3 years before I proposed. She grew up in a very sheltered household, so I was the first man she dated and slept with. We grew up in the country away from it all, so we felt old-fashioned compared to how a lot of people live their lives, but that's how we liked it. Our families were proud, and there wasn't any drama. After she said yes, we started looking for a house to buy. It figures that the first house we look at is being shown by an extremely attractive man, and I say that as heterosexually as possible. I wasn't worried at first. I thought my wife to be loved and respected me, but when I saw the way she looked at this stranger, it was like she saw all the future possibilities if she married him instead. She asked him lots of questions about his personal life and seemed completely intrigued that life brought them together. I felt left in the dust. This couldn't have been all in my head. She wasn't just being friendly. When we left the house tour, I asked her what that was all about, and she played dumb. She acted like I didn't just see her flirting with this guy, like her life depended on it. I told her what I saw, and she said I must be an extremely jealous person to have seen something that wasn't happening. Well, I told her we weren't buying that house because I didn't like that guy, and I wasn't comfortable with her seeing him ever again. Since that day, she started asking me more questions about her appearance and what my goals were in life. I think she started wondering if I was good enough to be with her. She started talking about how great it would be to make as much money as a realtor and to be able to be dressed up and just show houses seems so easy. I told her I didn't want her to work at the same realty place as that guy. Little did I know, she was already texting him and applied to the company. 2 weeks later, she told me she was hired as a bank teller. She started going to work each day, and I didn't even go to the bank she was supposedly working at until a week after she started. I later on figured out that she wasn't there. I called her to see where she was, and she answered in a cheery voice, but when I told her I was looking for her at the bank, she panicked. She started stuttering and saying she was out to lunch, but I told her not to lie to me. I said I already went inside and no one knew who she was. She was speechless. She finally said I had to promise not to be mad, and she told me she actually became a realtor. Of course, she was working at the realty place. I told her not to. Then, before I even admitted how mad I was, she told me we were invited to AP's house for dinner, the man that showed us the first house. I felt like I was losing my fiancé, and there was nothing I could do but play along. She swore they were only friends, and I didn't have any concrete proof otherwise. I wouldn't be able to divorce her without knowing I wasn't jumping to conclusions, so we went to his house. It was a bachelor's mansion, and it made me sick. There was another couple invited over, so at least it wasn't just the three of us, but he mostly spoke to my wife all night long. When I couldn't hold it anymore, I went to the bathroom, and when I came back out, they were gone. I asked the other couple where they went, and they said outside, but they didn't look certain. I went outside and started speed walking around the house to find them, but I couldn't. I started yelling like a crazy person and felt like my woman shouldn't have put me in this situation. When I went back inside, I must have looked panicked. I think the girl felt bad for me because she said she saw them go upstairs. I took 3 steps at a time and found that only one bedroom door was locked. I banged on it, demanding to see my fiancé, and it was about 30 seconds until he opened the door. All he said was he was sorry, old habits die hard when it comes to locking the door. But a few things crumbled his lie to pieces. First off, he had my fiancé's shade of lipstick on his lips. Her face was bright red, and she was trying to casually stand and hold her wine glass like she wasn't just caught in the act. AP called for the other couple as if he was upset with them for failing to guard the stairs like he asked, but it turned out they left. I walked into the room and sniffed around, even smelling my fiancé's neck. She held her breath, said I was being weird, and asked me if we could go back downstairs now. I ignored her and continued looking for clues. She stammered and said he was just showing her the space in his walk-in closets. I looked into her shameful eyes and asked how she had the nerve to lie to me, disobey me, and sleep with the guy I wanted her to avoid. At that moment, I knew she wasn't worth my commitment, as if all the things leading up to this weren't fishy enough. I told her she wasn't the hot stuff she thought she was, and she deserved to live a meaningless life without the sacred relationship between a man and a woman that I tried to have with her. AP was super quiet and awkward. He looked completely different from the confident selling man my fiancé was so infatuated with. I got in his terrified face and yelled that I should beat him to a pulp for taking my woman from me. He was so scared of that happening that he already called the police to request an officer's presence. I left before they got there. AP didn't realize that by doing that, he provided me with a police report I obtained a copy of, where they each admitted they were having an affair, and I caught them. I was able to use this to publicly shame them. They became the faces of sleazy salespersons you didn't want to trust around your own spouse. They lost their jobs and family support, while I dodged a lifelong mistake. It still freaks me out that she started an affair with the first attractive man she came in contact with as an engaged woman. OP, I am so glad you didn't marry this girl. She was obviously not ready to commit to you for the rest of her life. It seems to me she never had to face temptation before this. When she realized just how big the world was, her ego grew with it, while her morals all but disappeared. If she really was having an identity crisis or didn't think she was ready to be married, or even thought she needed time to explore the world on her own, she should have communicated her feelings to you. No matter how hard it is for someone to have that talk with another person, it's necessary. It's a part of growth, learning responsibility, and empathy for others. You would hate to be cheated on more than dumped, so do the hard thing and have the talk. You might be surprised what someone is willing to do to work on themselves or make things better. Thank you for sharing your story. I wish you all the best. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Take care.